Today with us is Gabriel Christian, who knew Rosie as a youth, who's going to be sharing some reflection on what would have been his 79th birthday and the 20th anniversary of his death. We're going to go right into the first question that we have for you today. Do you believe that the Dominican public ever got to know Rosie for who he really was?
No, I think a lot of Rosie's return to Dominica was saddled with propaganda. In those days, people were very antagonistic to anybody who believed in black power or Africa. People in Dominica were taught to hate their color. They would be taught to hate Africa. We lived under colonial conditioning of white supremacy, where Dominicans would call Dominicans black and ugly, where Dominicans would call Caribs all kinds of names. And so it was a very difficult time for people who believed in black consciousness. And some of those things still live with us today. In fact, the current government we have in Dominica is one that is riddled with white supremacy thinking. It puts foreigners over Dominicans and treats Dominicans with disrespect in the people it has appointed to represent us overseas, who are a bunch of criminals, really. And I think Rosie would have hated that. He would have hated that because it reflects the same sort of disrespect that black people treated each other with in the colonially induced pathology of inferiority complex. Rosie was a proud black person. He believed that black people were valuable in that we had brought much to the table as a race. We had been kidnapped from Africa, brought to Dominica. Our Carib people had been, expropriated, their lands taken, and we wanted to free ourselves of those kinds of beliefs of inferiority about Kalinago people, inferiority about Dominicans who were black. And when Rosie came back, people like me, students of my time, we had to really argue a lot with our parents and other people who were in that sort of thinking. When we were talking about independence, I remember a friend of mine who's a computer scientist now in Baltimore County, Anthony Richards, used to be a scientist with the Baltimore County government. He was at the St. Mary's Academy. He said when he came back from a panel discussion, he was at St. Mary's Academy, I was at the grammar school. He said, Gasson, he said his grandmother said to him, Tiboy, Pasatan, something like, I can't speak Patois too well, but he says, black people cannot rule black people. His grandmother is telling him that black people cannot rule black people. Rosie then cultivated in us a sense of study, a sense of self-respect, a sense of self-confidence. And Dominicans, even by the time he passed away, really had not appreciated what he represented. And I think the government we have has not done a good enough job, and also the society, in having symposia, panel discussions, organizations. We formed the Rosie Douglas Foundation, for instance, went strong for about 2-3 years, but without the support necessary from even members of the family and the government that he brought to power, it dwindled. We formed the Dominica Academy of Arts and Sciences because Rosie believed in education and arts and sciences. And we've done a lot of work, a lot of good work. We now have a Botanic Gardens website studying botanic science. But again, the government of the day has not supported those efforts to bring Dominicans together, from those who are overseas to those who are at home, working together on projects in science, technology, development. Those are the things Rosie really considered important, all grounded in education, self-respect, self-confidence, love of country over love of self and love of party. He believed in the nation. He believed in all Dominicans of different political persuasions coming together. And that's why Rosie was a big coalition builder. He believed in bringing people together.
Okay, taking the lead from the education standpoint, the next question would be, what would Rosie's vision for the present Dominica youth be?
Discipline. Rosie had been a cadet. He'd been a scout. I'd been a cadet. In fact, one of the first things he did was to restart or revive the Dominica Cadet Corps, which had gone out at independence, and which has now graduated many young people who otherwise would have been into lives of drugs and crime. When the earthquake in Portsmouth took place in 2004, the cadets were there to help. When Tropical Storm Erica took place, the cadets helped in the relief effort. And Rebuild Dominica in the United States was started by cadets like myself and Major Francis Richards, who was a former commandant. So Rosie believed in discipline. He also believed in organization. He would want young people to organize themselves in study groups, in cooperatives, in industry, in agriculture, in light industry. So we could do things like agro-processing, canning. In 1977, there was a fair at the Portsmouth Secondary School, at which time Rosie developed the Northern District Agricultural Processing Cooperative. And one of the things he displayed were cans of fruit, that dump fruit, started by Leopold Emanuel, aka also known as Money God, had set up in the 60s, where we had canning of oranges and pineapples and grapefruit juice and orange juice, those kinds of things. Today, 40 or 50 years later, we do not have a canning factory in Dominica. It's true to say Rosie, having been trained in agriculture, was very focused on agriculture and industry, and would like to see our people, or young people, trained in the vocational arts, plumbing, metalworking, carpentry, masonry, things that could give them useful lives.
Great. So, having said that, what plans Rosie decision to unionize and empower the workers on his father's estate?
You mean what explains that? What explains that was his whole idea of social justice. Rosie believed in social justice, and he thought the first place he should start, charity begins at home, was on his father's estate, because though his father was a hardworking man and had been made wealthy by good investments, the nature of the society was, in a colonial construct, the exploitation of man by man. And he felt that the young people on the estate and their parents should have the same opportunities he had. Rosie was not selfish. So he felt, well, the workers on his estate, on his father's estate, should be unionized, or they should be organized to get better working conditions, to get better pay. He didn't want it to be that the wealth of the estate benefited just the Douglas family. He wanted it to benefit all those who sweat and labor brought wealth to that estate, that wealth be equitably shared. That was his concept. So it was really refreshing that he didn't point fingers at others. He looked at his own family. And many people in his family, many members of his family, I can tell you, did not support Rosie Douglas, and that's just the truth. A lot of them, of course, appreciated him after he had passed away and had become famous. But that's the truth. They thought he was a little bit too radical, and that he should have just come back and worked on the father's estate as his father had worked before, without any change. But Rosie was a person who believed in social transformation for the better of all Dominicans.
I think we can all take a page from his book.
Indeed.
How do you measure Rosie's love for his country?
Oh, that's all. So I'll give you a quick example. Our last time here in Washington, Rosie used to speak at Georgetown University School of Foreign Service. There was a Barbadian had done a divorce case for, who had been at Sir George with Rosie in Canada in '69. And when Rosie became Prime Minister, he worked at Bloomingdale's. He said, bring him to me at Bloomingdale's and I'll kit him out, suit him up. So I wanted to bring Rosie there as a surprise. But, Rosie was a very focused guy. And so when he said to me, what's Bloomingdale's? What's that about? I said to him, I had to tell him the story. Rosie said, Gabriel, you talking about clothes? Clothes you talking about, man? I said, we have work to do for Dominica. Let's go. Rosie never met his name was Cumberbatch. The next time I saw him was at Rosie's memorial service in Cheverly with tears in his eyes. Rosie didn't care about clothes and mansions on the hill and palaces. Rosie was very focused on people-centered development, education, agriculture, industry. I told you about the shoe that I bought for Rosie in New Orleans. When I came here in May, Rosie said the shoe couldn't decline. What it turns out was someone who's getting married didn't have a pair of shoes. Rosie gave it away to them. But he had done that before. I was at sixth form. We were going to Cuba. Steve John, Debbie Douglas, the delegates to the 11th Full Festival, and my suede boots had a little opening. I didn't have a chance to go to the shoemaker. Rosie went to his truck. He had a Ford F-150, and he took these Clark's boots he brought from Canada. Just a couple of years since he'd come back from Canada. He had a lot of Canadian clothing. And he said, look, Gable, use these boots. You're the president of the Federation of Students. You need to have good boots on. When you get to Cuba and you fix your shoes, give it to Steve John. His shoes are worse than yours. And that was the kind of person Rosie was. And he was also funny. I came to Portsmouth. I was at sixth form then, and there was a meeting. But after the meeting, there's a little party at the Douglas guest house. And Rosie, was like a big brother. And I'd never seen a digital watch. All the watches were mechanical watches in those days. Rosie's watch was the first digital watch that I saw. It was a black watch with red numbers. The numbers came on in red. And Rosie came up to me and says, Gabe, I hear you're going to a party and you want to get a girlfriend. Let me tell you how you get a girlfriend. You see, look, he took the watch off his hand. Okay, he took the watch off his hand. He put it on my hand and says, Gabriel, look, I'm giving you this watch to go to this party tonight. And when you see you come to talk to a girl, just look at it and just hit this button. And when these numbers come out, she's bound to love you. That was Rosie Douglas. He was a joke as well. He was loving and kind and selfie-facing, modest, not pompous, and he would never have said anything like "no law, no constitution won't allow me to run for office." He was very down to earth, could give you a shit off his back, and he led us well. The first thing Rosie gave me was a book, Common Sense by Thomas Paine, the American revolutionary who advocated for U.S. independence. Common Sense. Rosie never took us away from school. He wanted to know that we were studying. When the courthouse burned, the House of Assembly in 1979, during the uprising against Patrick John, I was in the midst of my sixth form Cambridge University A-level exams. Rosie was sky red. Crowds are gathering with cudgels and stuff. The country is in chaos. We're in the midst of an insurrection. So I said to Rosie, I don't think I can take my exam on Monday. That was I think on a Saturday or something in June, following the May 29th riot that overthrew Patrick John. And we're driving in this Ford F-150 down to Portsmouth. I was going to say Portsmouth because Rosie was we were organizing ourselves and Rosie was in chaos. And he paused for a moment. We were at Collie Ho somewhere there, and he says, Gabriel, if you don't take the exam on Monday, when are you going to take it? I took that exam and I got the best grade in history in 6 years at sixth form. Henry Volney was one of my teachers. So, Rosie always believed in education and encouraged us to do our best. And when we formed the Popular Independence Committee, and our group, category number 1, of which Justice Andre was a member, but he wasn't a justice then, and people like Smiley Burnett and Lloyd Pascal and the others, he made us have an agenda. We had to have Robert's Rules of Order, have an agenda, write papers, do pamphlets, move a vote of thanks, move a motion. Rosie had gone to McGill, which is the Harvard of Canada, and he had come back with all his ideas of organization, of essay writing, and today those things lived with us and impacted positively our academic achievements.
Great. Well, with those kinds of memories, I can see why Rosie is special to you. And so, what should young people do to honor Rosie's memory?
Study, study, study. Organize, organize, organize. Love your country, love your community, love justice, love the indigenous people. Love your African heritage. Don't disrespect yourselves by doing drugs or fighting or joining gangs. And if you're given a job as a police officer, do not brutalize your citizens. If you're given a job as a civil servant, don't steal the state's money. If you're given a job as a minister, as a prime minister, do not loot the treasury and build palaces on a hill or have it up in offshore bank accounts or benefit just your friends, family, or party supporters. When you're a government of all the people. So we need to have Rosie's vision of an all-embracing society where justice reigns, where we have pride in our African heritage, pride in our Carib or Kalinago heritage. Of course, pride also in our European heritage where it exists, because he believed in all people coming together. Black, white, Asian. Rosie was not only a Pan-Africanist, he was a humanitarian and believed in unity of all God's children. And first and foremost, he believed in human kindness, the sort of human kindness that his Christian faith suggested to him. We were talking socialism then, but we saw no incompatibility between socialism, social justice, and Christianity. In fact, we thought Christ was a socialist, because what did he do with the fish? When he got the fish, did he keep it all for himself? And Mary Magdalene? No. Or his father Joseph? No. He took the fish and he multiplied it. He took the loaves of bread and he multiplied it and he fed the multitude.